Three 5-year-old children just burst into the most expensive wedding in American history. Security guards freeze. Billionaires gasp. Cameras flash like lightning. And then those tiny voices shatter the silence with words that will change everything. Don't marry her. She only wants your money. But here's what nobody in that cathedral knew, including the groom himself. Those weren't just random children crashing a society wedding. They were his children, his own flesh and blood, standing in that doorway with tears streaming down their faces, desperate to save the father they'd never met from a woman planning to murder him before their honeymoon ended. The bride? She's no fairy tale princess. She's a cold-blooded killer who's already buried 3 previous husbands, each one conveniently dying just after changing their wills in her favor. The poison is already prepared. The murder weapon is hidden in her designer purse. And in less than 24 hours, Marcus Wellington, one of America's most powerful billionaires, who had been found dead on his private island. Another victim of what everyone would assume was a heart attack brought on by the stress of extreme wealth. But love has a way of exposing evil, even when it comes from the smallest, most innocent voices. These triplets travel hundreds of miles on a desperate mission to crash their father's wedding and reveal a truth so shocking it would destroy a killer's perfect plan and reunite a family that was torn apart by fear, deception, and a secret that nobody saw coming. You're about to witness the most dramatic family reunion ever caught on camera, where courage comes in small packages, justice wears a yellow sundress, and sometimes the greatest love stories begin with the words every bride dreads hearing. Stop. Don't marry her. This is a true story of how 3 brave children saved their billionaire father's life and proved that blood is thicker than champagne. Love is stronger than money. And the truth, no matter how deeply buried, will always find a way to shine through the darkness. Get ready for a story that will restore your faith in family, justice, and the incredible power of innocent hearts willing to speak truth to evil. The cathedral bells echoed through Manhattan's most exclusive district, their golden chimes announcing what society magazines call the wedding of the century. Inside St. Patrick's Cathedral, white roses cascaded from every pillar, their sweet fragrance mixing with the scent of expensive perfume and polished marble. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow reflections across silk gowns and tailored tuxedos, while photographers captured every glittering moment. The guest list read like a who's who of American power. Senators, tech moguls, Hollywood royalty, and oil barons all gathered under one sacred roof. But beneath the surface of this billionaire fairy tale, something dark was brewing. A secret so devastating it would shatter this perfect facade in mere moments. Marcus Wellington stood at the altar, his silver hair perfectly styled, diamond cufflinks catching the morning light, streaming through stained glass windows. At 62, he commanded respect in every boardroom from Wall Street to Silicon Valley, his empire spanning technology, real estate, and renewable energy worth $47 billion. His weathered hands, marked by decades of hard work before his fortune, now trembled slightly as he adjusted his platinum watch. The man who could buy entire countries felt nervous, vulnerable, almost childlike in this moment of supposed triumph. Behind his confident smile, memories of loneliness haunted him. Years of failed relationships, trust broken by gold diggers, an emptiness that all his wealth couldn't fill. Today, he believed, would finally change everything. Victoria Ashford glided down the aisle like a vision in white silk, her emerald eyes sparkling with what guests mistook for pure joy. Her beauty was breathtaking. Porcelain skin, golden hair swept into an elegant chignon, and a smile that could melt the coldest heart. The handcrafted Vera Wang gown, worth more than most people's homes, hugged her curves perfectly, while a 20-carat diamond tiara caught every flash from the cameras. She moved with the grace of a dancer, each step calculated, each gesture rehearsed to perfection. The congregation murmured their approval, completely enchanted by her radiant presence. But if they could see behind those emerald eyes, they would witness something far more sinister than bridal bliss. Marcus had met Victoria 18 months ago at a charity gala for underprivileged children, where she volunteered as a coordinator. She spoke passionately about helping poor families, her voice trembling with apparent emotion as she described visiting homeless shelters and food banks. Her humanitarian work seemed genuine, her dedication to justice and equality impressive even to someone as successful as Marcus. She never asked about his money, never seemed impressed by his private jets or Manhattan penthouse. Instead, she listened to his dreams, his fears, his hopes for leaving a meaningful legacy beyond mere wealth. For the first time in decades, Marcus felt truly seen, truly loved for who he was beneath the billions. Their courtship unfolded like something from a romantic novel. Moonlit dinners overlooking Central Park, weekend getaways to his private island, quiet evenings where Victoria would read poetry aloud while Marcus worked on his laptop. She encouraged his philanthropic efforts, suggesting they establish a foundation together to fight injustice and help struggling communities. Her ideas were brilliant, her passion infectious, and Marcus found himself falling deeper in love each day. Victoria seemed to understand his loneliness, the burden of immense wealth, the difficulty of trusting anyone's motives. She made him believe that true love could still exist in his carefully guarded world. But Victoria Ashford was not who she claimed to be. Her real name was Victoria Kane, and her background was far from the humble beginnings she described to Marcus. Born into a wealthy but bankrupt family in Connecticut, she had spent her adult life perfecting the art of manipulation and deception. Her previous 3 marriages had all ended with substantial divorce settlements, each husband left emotionally and financially devastated. She studied her targets like a predator studies prey, learning their weaknesses, their desires, their deepest fears. Marcus Wellington represented her ultimate prize, enough wealth to secure her future for generations to come. The wedding ceremony began with traditional hymns that filled the cathedral's vaulted ceiling, voices rising in harmony while sunlight painted the altar in shades of gold and crimson. Father Mackenzie, a close friend of Marcus's family, spoke about the sacred nature of marriage, the importance of trust, honesty, and unconditional love. Victoria's smile never wavered as she recited her vows, promising to cherish Marcus for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, till death do us part. Her voice rang clear and sweet, bringing tears to many guests' eyes. Marcus squeezed her hands gently, believing he had finally found his soulmate. The weight of his loneliness seemed to lift with each word she spoke. As the ceremony reached its climax, with Father Mackenzie preparing to pronounce them husband and wife, the cathedral's heavy wooden doors suddenly burst open. The sound echoed to the sacred space like thunder, causing every head to turn in shock and disbelief. Security guards moved instinctively toward the disturbance, their hands reaching for concealed weapons, while guests gasped and whispered anxiously among themselves. The photographer's camera flashes froze a moment in time, Marcus's face showing confusion, Victoria's mask beginning to slip for just an instant. Something was terribly wrong, and everyone could feel the shift in the atmosphere. The fairy tale was about to become a nightmare. But nothing could have prepared the congregation for what happened next. 3 small figures appeared in the doorway, their tiny voices about to shatter the most powerful man in America's carefully constructed world. Stories like this remind us why truth always finds a way to surface, no matter how deeply buried. 3 small children stood in the cathedral doorway, their dark skin glowing against the bright morning light flooding in from the street behind them. The oldest, a girl no more than 5 years old, wore a yellow sundress that had seen better days, her hair braided with colorful ribbons that caught the light. Her twin brothers flanked her on either side, dressed in matching blue shirts and khaki pants, their eyes wide with determination and fear. All 3 shared the same striking features: high cheekbones, intelligent brown eyes, and a stubborn set to their jaws that would have been familiar to anyone who knew Marcus Wellington well. They clutched each other's hands tightly, drawing strength from their bond as they faced a sea of shocked, wealthy faces staring back at them. Their small voices had already begun to tremble, but their mission was too important to abandon now. "Daddy," the little girl cried out, her voice cutting to the stunned silence like a knife through silk. The word hit Marcus like a physical blow, causing him to stumble backward and grip the altar rail for support. His face drained of all color as he stared at the children, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing and hearing. Victoria's perfectly manicured fingers tightened around her bouquet until her knuckles went white, her emerald eyes flashing with something dangerous. The guests began to murmur among themselves, their whispers growing louder as they tried to make sense of this unprecedented interruption. Cameras flashed as photographers sensed the story of a lifetime unfolding before their eyes. The children took another step forward, their courage wavering, but their love stronger than their fear. 7 years ago, Marcus had loved a woman named Amara Johnson with every fiber of his being. She was a brilliant architect from a poor neighborhood in Detroit, working her way through graduate school while supporting her elderly grandmother. Her beauty wasn't the polished perfection of high society. It was raw and natural, authentic in a way that took Marcus's breath away. Her laugh could light up the darkest room, and her passion for designing affordable housing for struggling families inspired him to fund several community development projects. Amara never asked for anything, never seemed impressed by his wealth or power. She challenged him intellectually, made him think about social responsibility, pushed him to use his fortune for good rather than just accumulating more. Their love felt pure, honest, real in a way Marcus had never experienced before. They had planned a quiet wedding, away from the media circus that surrounded Marcus's every move. Amara wanted something simple, a small ceremony with close friends and family, followed by a honeymoon helping to build homes for hurricane victims in Louisiana. Marcus had already designed the perfect engagement ring, a modest diamond surrounded by sapphires that matched her eyes. He was going to propose on her birthday, taking her to the rooftop garden of his penthouse where they had shared their first kiss. The future stretched ahead of them like a golden path, full of love, purpose, and the promise of a family built on genuine affection rather than financial convenience. Marcus had never been happier, never felt more hopeful about what life could offer beyond the lonely isolation of extreme wealth. But then Amara disappeared. One morning, Marcus woke up to find her side of the bed empty, her clothes gone from his closet, her architectural drawings missing from his home office. No note, no explanation, no goodbye. She had simply vanished as if she had never existed at all. His private investigators found nothing. His security team discovered no trace of where she might have gone. Her apartment had been cleaned out, her phone disconnected, her university enrollment mysteriously canceled. It was as if Amara Johnson had been erased from the world, leaving behind only the echo of her laughter and the memory of her touch. Marcus searched for months, hiring the best detectives money could buy, but every lead turned cold. Eventually, heartbroken and defeated, he forced himself to accept that she had abandoned him. For years, Marcus believed Amara had been just another gold digger who got scared when their relationship became serious. Perhaps the pressure of his wealth had overwhelmed her, or maybe she had found someone else, someone more normal, someone who could give her the simple life she claimed to want. The pain of her abandonment had hardened his heart, made him cynical about love and suspicious of every woman who showed interest in him. He threw himself into his business empire, working 18-hour days to drown out the loneliness and betrayal that ate at his soul. The memory of Amara became a wound that never fully healed, a reminder that even the richest man in the world could be left empty-handed when it came to matters of the heart. But Marcus had been wrong about everything. Amara hadn't left because she didn't love him. She had fled because she loved him too much to burden him with the truth she thought would destroy his life. 3 weeks before her disappearance, she had discovered she was pregnant with triplets. The doctor's appointment had been routine, but the ultrasound revealed 3 tiny heartbeats that would change everything forever. Amara stared at the grainy images on the screen, overwhelmed by joy and terror in equal measure. She knew Marcus wanted children, had talked about starting a family together, but the timing felt impossible. He was in the middle of a hostile takeover that required all his attention, fighting legal battles that could determine the future of his empire. How could she add the complexity of triplets to his already overwhelming responsibilities? More than that, Amara feared what his world would do to innocent children. She had seen how the media treated Marcus, how his enemies used every personal detail as ammunition against him. The thought of her babies being photographed, followed, potentially threatened because of their father's wealth and power filled her with protective rage. She imagined them growing up in bulletproof cars, surrounded by bodyguards, never knowing if friendships were genuine or motivated by money. The poor girl from Detroit who worked 3 jobs to pay for college couldn't bear the thought of raising children in golden cages, no matter how luxurious those cages might be. So she made the heartbreaking decision to disappear, to raise her children far from the dangerous spotlight that followed Marcus Wellington everywhere he went. Now those same children stood in cathedral, their innocent voices about to reveal the truth that would shatter not just a wedding, but the carefully constructed lies that had shaped 7 years of pain and misunderstanding. Amara Johnson had spent 7 years living under the name Amara Williams in a small apartment complex in Cleveland, working as a freelance architectural consultant while raising triplets on her own. The neighborhood wasn't wealthy, but it was safe, filled with working families who looked out for each other's children and shared resources when times got tough. Her one-bedroom apartment was cramped but cozy, with architectural drawings covering every wall and toys scattered across the worn carpet. The twins, Marcus Jr. and Michael, slept on bunk beds in the living room, while their sister Maya shared Amara's bedroom in a space barely big enough for 2 twin mattresses. Every morning, Amara would make breakfast on a hot plate while the children got ready for preschool, their laughter filling the small space with warmth that no mansion could provide. It wasn't a life she had dreamed of, but it was honest work supporting honest love. The pregnancy had been difficult from the very beginning, complicated by stress and emotional turmoil of leaving the only man she had ever truly loved. Amara worked part-time at community center, designing renovation plans for low-income housing projects, while her belly grew rounder with each passing month. The other women in the building became her family. Mrs. Rodriguez from Tubi brought her homemade soup when morning sickness left her too weak to cook, while teenage Keisha from downstairs helped with grocery shopping when climbing stairs became impossible. These poor but generous neighbors never asked questions about the father, never judged her for being a single mother. They simply wrapped her in the kind of community support that money couldn't buy, proving that true wealth came from human kindness rather than bank accounts. When the triplets were born on a snowy February morning, Amara held all 3 babies in her arms and whispered promises she intended to keep forever. Maya entered the world first, her lungs strong enough to announce her arrival to the entire maternity ward, followed by Marcus Jr., whose quiet demeanor reminded Amara painfully of his father. Little Michael came last, gripping his siblings' hands as if he already understood they would face the world together. The babies were healthy, beautiful, and bore such a striking resemblance to Marcus Wellington that Amara's heart broke all over again. She traced their tiny features with trembling fingers, seeing the man she loved reflected in their innocent faces. In that moment, she almost called him, almost revealed the truth, but the sound of helicopters circling overhead, paparazzi following some celebrity to the same hospital, reminded her why she had to stay hidden. Raising 3 children alone while working multiple jobs pushed Amara to her physical and emotional limits daily. Mornings began at 5 a.m. with diaper changes and bottle feedings, followed by rushing to drop the kids at a community daycare that charged based on income rather than ability to pay. She worked designing affordable housing projects during the day, then picked up freelance drafting work at night after the children were asleep. Her hands grew callous from drawing by lamplight. Her back ached from hunching over a small desk for hours, but she never complained. Every sacrifice felt worthwhile when Maya would show her a crayon drawing, or when the boys would fall asleep curled against her while she read them bedtime stories. They were poor in money but rich in love, and Amara convinced herself that was enough. But as the children grew older, their questions about their father became harder to deflect with vague answers and gentle redirections. Maya, the boldest of 3, would point at families on television and ask why they didn't have a daddy like other kids. Marcus Jr., thoughtful and observant like his namesake, noticed that all their friends' fathers came to school events and playground visits. Little Michael, the peacemaker, would comfort his siblings when they cried about feeling different, but Mara could see the confusion in his young eyes too. She tried to fill both parental roles, playing catch in the small courtyard behind their building and teaching them to tie their shoes, but she couldn't ignore the longing in their voices when they spoke about the father they had never met. The truth became unavoidable when Maya started kindergarten and came home with questions about a family tree project. Her teacher, Mrs. Patterson, had gently suggested that Amara might want help fill in the paternal side of the diagram, not knowing she was opening a wound that had never properly healed. That night, as Amara tucked her daughter into bed, Maya's small hand grabbed hers with surprising strength. "Mama," she whispered in the darkness, "other kids say their daddies love them so much. Does our daddy love us too, wherever he is?" The innocence in that question shattered every defense Amara had built around her heart. She knew the time for secrets was running out, and her children deserved to know the truth about the man whose eyes they had inherited. On a quiet Sunday evening, with rain pattering against their apartment windows and the children gathered around her on the second-hand couch, Amara finally told them about their father. She showed them pictures she had hidden for years. Photos of Marcus laughing at charity events, newspaper clippings about his business successes, magazine articles about his philanthropic work. The children stared at the images with wide eyes, seeing their own features reflected in the face of one of America's most powerful men. "Your daddy is a good man who helps lots of people," Amara explained, her voice thick with emotion. "He doesn't know about you because I was scared that his dangerous world might hurt you, but he would love you so much if he knew you existed." Maya reached out to touch Marcus's picture with one small finger, tracing his smile with wonder and recognition. The revelation changed everything for the 5-year-old triplets, filling them with a mixture of pride, confusion, and determination that surprised even their mother. They began asking endless questions about their father, what he liked to eat, what made him laugh, why he looked sad in some photographs. Amara answered as honestly as she could, painting a picture of Marcus Wellington the man, rather than Marcus Wellington the billionaire. She told them about his love for architecture, which explained their own fascination with building blocks and drawing houses. She described his gentle hands and kind heart, his dedication to helping poor families find better homes. The children absorbed every detail like sponges, building a relationship with their absent father through stories and imagination. But when Maya saw a news report about Marcus's upcoming wedding to Victoria Ashford, everything changed in an instant that would alter their family's destiny forever. The wedding announcement appeared on every news channel and social media platform. Like a celebration, the whole world was invited to witness. Maya had been playing with her building blocks on the living room floor when the breaking news banner flashed across their small television screen, followed by footage of Marcus Wellington and Victoria Ashford at some glamorous charity gala. The little girl's hands froze mid-construction as she recognized her father's face. But this time he wasn't alone. A beautiful woman in a sparkling dress hung on his arm, smiling for the cameras. Maya's bottom lip began to tremble as the reporter enthusiastically described the fairy tale romance and wedding of the century planned for following weekend. Her innocent heart couldn't understand why her daddy was marrying someone else when he didn't even know his real children existed. "Mama," Maya's cry brought Amara rushing from the kitchen, where she had been preparing dinner for the triplets. The sight that greeted her stopped her heart. All 3 children clustered around the television, their faces reflecting confusion, hurt, and a determination that reminded her painfully of their father. Marcus Jr. pointed at the screen with a steady finger, his young voice trying to process the impossible situation. "That's our daddy, but why is he with that lady? Doesn't he want to marry you instead?" Little Michael had tears streaming down his cheeks as he asked a question that cut deepest. "Is he getting a new family because we're not good enough?" Amara sank to her knees and pulled all 3 children into her arms, struggling to explain adult complications to hearts too pure to understand deception and manipulation. That night, after the children had finally fallen asleep, Amara lay awake staring at the ceiling and wrestling with 7 years of accumulated guilt and regret. She had convinced herself that keeping Marcus's children a secret was protecting them, but watching their innocent hearts break over their father's wedding made her question every choice she had made. Perhaps they deserved to know their father, and perhaps Marcus deserved to know about the 3 beautiful souls he had helped create. The poor girl from Detroit who had been too intimidated by billionaire society to trust and love now saw her mistake with painful clarity. Fear had stolen 7 years of birthdays, bedtime stories, first words, and first steps from a man who had cherished every moment. Her protective instincts had become selfish barriers that hurt the very children she was trying to shield. The next morning brought a conversation that would change everything, as Maya approached her mother with the innocent courage that only children possess. "Mama," she said, her small hands clasped behind her back in a gesture that mirrored Marcus's own nervous habit. "We want to meet our daddy before he marries that lady. Maybe if he knows about us, he won't be sad anymore." The wisdom in her 5-year-old daughter's words hit Amara like a physical blow. Through all her complex adult reasoning and fear-based decisions, she had missed the simple truth that children understood instinctively. Love shared was always better than love hidden. Marcus Jr. and Michael nodded their agreement, their young faces showing a unity of purpose that reminded Amara of their father's legendary business determination. These children had inherited more than just Marcus's features. They had his strength, his moral compass, and his unwillingness to accept injustice. Amara spent the entire week researching Victoria Ashford, using her old journalism contacts and architectural network connections to dig deeper into the woman who was about to become her children's stepmother. What she discovered made her blood run cold with a terror that had nothing to do with wealth or social status, and everything to do with maternal instinct. Victoria's previous marriages had ended with suspicious circumstances. One husband died in a convenient accident just months after changing his will. Another suffered mysterious illness that left him incapacitated and dependent on Victoria's care. The pattern was subtle but unmistakable to someone looking for it, and Amara realized with growing horror that Marcus was walking into a deadly trap. Her decision to keep his children secret hadn't just robbed him of fatherhood. It had left him vulnerable to a predator who saw him as prey rather than a partner. The children sensed their mother's growing urgency and fear, even though she tried to shield them from the adult complexities of the situation they faced. Maya, always a leader among the triplets, began organizing her brothers with the efficiency of a general preparing for battle. "We have to save Daddy," she announced with 5-year-old certainty, because that's what families do for each other. They practice what they would say, how they would prove their identity, and how they would convince a cathedral full of strangers that they were telling the truth. Marcus Jr. suggested they bring the photos their mother had shown them, while Michael worried about whether their father would believe them or think they were lying. The children's pure love and determination broke through every barrier of doubt and fear that had paralyzed their mother for 7 years. On the morning of the wedding, Amara dressed her children in the best clothes they owned and braided Maya's hair with the same colorful ribbons she wore in Marcus's favorite photograph. The triplets stood before their bathroom mirror, practicing their words and drawing strength from each other's presence. "Remember," Maya told her brothers, "we're not just telling Daddy who we are. We're saving him from someone who wants to hurt him." The weight of responsibility on such small shoulders should have been crushing, but these children had inherited their father's resilience along with his features. They understood, with a clarity that only innocent hearts possess, that sometimes love required courage, and courage meant speaking truth even when the whole world was watching. As their taxi approached St. Patrick's Cathedral, the children pressed their faces against the windows and stared in awe at the crowds of reporters, security guards, and elegant guests streaming through the massive doors. This was their father's world, a realm of power and privilege so far removed from their small Cleveland apartment that it might as well have been another planet. But Maya reached over and squeezed her brother's hands, reminding them of what their mother had taught them. Rich or poor, family is family and love is love. They had traveled hundreds of miles to crash a billionaire's wedding, armed with nothing but truth and the unshakable belief that their father would choose them over anyone else once he knew they existed. The moment had arrived for 3 5-year-old children to rewrite their family's destiny with voices too small to ignore. "Don't marry her." Maya's voice rang through the cathedral with the clarity of truth itself, cutting through the shocked silence like a sword through silk. Her small frame seemed to grow larger as every eye in the sanctuary turned toward the 3 children standing in the doorway, their courage burning brighter than all the crystal chandeliers combined. Marcus Jr. and Michael flanked their sister, their young faces set with determination that would have made their namesake father proud. The little girl took a deep breath and shouted even louder, "Daddy, don't marry her. She only wants your money." The words echoed off the cathedral's vaulted ceiling, reaching every corner of the sacred space and penetrating every heart present. Security guards froze mid-step, unsure how to handle children making such explosive accusations at society's most watched wedding. Marcus Wellington stared at the triplets as if he were seeing ghosts rise from his deepest dreams and most painful memories. His weathered hands began to shake as he took in their familiar features. Maya's stubborn chin that mirrored his own, Marcus Jr.'s thoughtful eyes that held the same intensity he saw in his bathroom mirror each morning, Michael's gentle smile that reminded him of his late mother. The resemblance was undeniable, unmistakable, overwhelming in its clarity. "Amara," he whispered, the name escaping his lips like a prayer he thought would never be answered. His legs nearly gave out beneath him as the implications crashed over him in waves. These were his children, his flesh and blood, the family he had dreamed of but never known existed. 7 years of loneliness and heartbreak suddenly made sense in the most beautiful and devastating way possible. Victoria's perfect mask slipped for just an instant, revealing something cold and calculating beneath her bridal radiance. Her emerald eyes flashed with fury as she realized her carefully constructed fairy tale was crumbling before hundreds of witnesses and dozens of cameras. She had spent months planning this moment, manipulating every detail to ensure her complete victory over Marcus Wellington's heart and fortune. The appearance of these children, his obvious biological children, threatened everything she had worked toward. Her grip on her bouquet tightened until the stems began to crack. White roses scattering petals across the marble floor like tears from heaven itself. But Victoria Ashford hadn't survived 3 previous marriages by giving up easily, and she certainly wouldn't be defeated by 3 small children, no matter whose blood ran through their veins. The wedding guests erupted into chaos as phones began buzzing with text messages and social media notifications, the scandal already spreading across the internet at lightning speed. Senators whispered urgently to their aides, tech moguls frantically called their publicists, and Hollywood stars tried to position themselves for the best camera angles of the unfolding drama. The photographer's flashes created a strobe light effect as he captured what would become the most famous wedding photos in American history. Not a bride and groom's happiness, but a family's explosive reunion. Father Mackenzie stood frozen at the altar, his prayer book hanging forgotten in his hands as he watched his friend's world transform in real time. The sacred ceremony had become a courtroom where truth was the only witness that mattered. Maya stepped forward with the fearless confidence of a child who had never learned that adults might not listen to her voice. "Daddy," she called out, her small hand reaching toward Marcus across the vast cathedral space. "We're your real children. Mama told us all about you, and we came to save you from her." She pointed an accusatory finger at Victoria with the unwavering certainty that only innocent hearts possess. Marcus Jr. and Michael moved to support their sister, the 3 of them creating a united front of truth against a wall of wealth and deception. Their matching features, their synchronized movements, their shared determination left no doubt in any observer's mind. These children belonged to Marcus Wellington as surely as the sun belonged to the sky. "She's lying." Victoria's voice cracked as she fought to regain control of the narrative that was slipping through her manicured fingers like water. "Marcus, darling, surely you can see this as some kind of elaborate setup by your business rivals. These children are clearly paid actors, coached to disrupt our special day." Her laugh sounded brittle and desperate in the cathedral's acoustics, nothing like the melodious tones that had charmed Marcus during their courtship. She reached for his arm with grasping fingers, trying to physically anchor him to her side, while her empire of lies crumbled around them. But even as she spoke, Victoria could see the recognition dawn in Marcus's eyes, the father's instinct recognizing his offspring despite 7 years of separation. Her carefully laid plans were unraveling thread by thread, and panic began to creep into her voice. Marcus took a step toward his children, then another, his expensive Italian shoes echoing against the marble floor as he moved away from the altar and toward the greatest revelation of his life. Each step felt like a lifetime of questions being answered, a lifetime of longing finally being fulfilled. The children ran toward her with arms outstretched, their small legs carrying them down the cathedral aisle faster than their mother had ever walked it. When they collided with their father's legs in a tangle of tears and laughter, Marcus dropped to his knees and gathered all 3 triplets into his arms. The embrace felt like coming home after being lost in the wilderness for 7 years, like finding pieces of soul he hadn't even realized were missing. "We have pictures," Maya whispered into her father's ear, pulling a crumpled photograph from her yellow dress pocket. It showed a younger Marcus and Amara laughing together at some long-forgotten moment of happiness, their love captured forever in faded colors and bent corners. "Mama kept them all these years because she still loves you, but she was scared your world was too dangerous for us." Marcus Jr. and Michael added their own whispered confessions, stories of wondering about their father, dreams of meeting him, and a desperate hope that he would want them in his life. As Marcus held his children and breathed in their familiar scent, somehow both foreign and completely known, He felt his heart breaking and healing simultaneously. Victoria watched her perfect wedding dissolve into Marcus's perfect family reunion, and something dangerous flickered behind her emerald eyes as she realized gentle manipulation would no longer be enough to secure her prize. If you think this story is powerful, subscribe now because the truth is about to get even more shocking. You want proof? Victoria's voice turned venomous as she realized her fairy tale facade could no longer fool anyone in the cathedral. Her emerald eyes blazed with fury that transformed her beautiful features into something almost demonic, the mask of sweetness finally slipping away completely. She reached into her designer purse with trembling fingers, pulling out a small vial filled with clear liquid that caught the morning light streaming through the stained glass windows. Fine. You want to know the truth about your precious bride. Her laugh echoed to the sacred space like breaking glass, sharp and dangerous and completely unhinged. The wedding guests gasped in collective horror as Victoria held up the vial like a trophy, her white silk gown suddenly looking more like a burial shroud. This was supposed to go into your champagne toast. My darling husband, just a few drops in your glass, and by tomorrow morning, you'd be dead from what everyone would assume was a heart attack. The poison had been carefully chosen after months of research into untraceable substances that mimic natural causes of death in older men. Victoria had connections in underground pharmaceutical circles, relationships built during her previous marriages when she had experimented with different methods of eliminating inconvenient husbands. The clear liquid contained a concentrated neurotoxin derived from rare plants, virtually undetectable in standard autopsy procedures, and designed to cause cardiac arrest within hours of consumption. She had planned every detail meticulously. The timing during their honeymoon when they would be alone on Marcus's private island, the disposal of evidence in shark-infested waters, even the grief-stricken widow's performance she would give for the media. Marcus Wellington would become another tragic casualty of the stress and pressure that came with immense wealth, leaving behind a devastated wife who would inherit everything according to the will she had convinced him to change just weeks earlier. Marcus felt his children's small hands tighten around his arms as the reality of Victoria's murderous intentions sank into his consciousness like ice water in his veins. The woman he had trusted with his heart, his home, his most intimate secrets had been planning to kill him from the very beginning of their relationship. Every tender moment, every passionate kiss, every whispered promise of eternal love had been calculated steps in an elaborate dance toward his grave. His successful businessman's instincts, honed by decades of detecting lies and manipulation in corporate boardrooms, had been completely overwhelmed by his desperate longing for genuine companionship. Victoria had studied his weaknesses like a predator studies prey, using his loneliness and his memories of lost love with Amara to blind him to the dangers sleeping beside him every night. The charity work, the humanitarian passion, the foundation we were supposed to start together, Marcus said, his voice thick with disgust and dawning comprehension. All of it was just research for you, wasn't it? Learning about my values, my dreams, my vulnerabilities, so you could exploit them more effectively. Victoria's cruel smile confirmed his worst suspicions as she continued to clutch the vial of poison like a sacred relic. She had never cared about helping poor families or fighting injustice. Those causes had simply been tools to earn his trust and affection. Her volunteer work at homeless shelters had been performance art. Her tears over suffering children, nothing more than practiced manipulation. The woman who had made her believe in love again had never felt a genuine emotion in her entire calculating existence. The cathedral erupted into pandemonium as security guards finally overcame their shock and began moving toward Victoria, while wedding guests scrambled for exits and photographers captured every moment of the explosive revelation. Several prominent politicians quietly slipped out side doors, unwilling to be associated with a scandal of this magnitude, while others pulled out their phones to call their publicists and damage control specialists. The poison vial gleamed in Victoria's hand like a deadly jewel, proof of premeditated murder that would have succeeded if not for 3 brave children and their desperate love for a father they had never met. Father Mackenzie clutched his prayer book and whispered urgent prayers for protection, while the cathedral's hired security team coordinated with federal agents who had been monitoring the high-profile wedding from beginning. "You have no idea how long I've been planning this," Victoria snarled, her beautiful features now twisted with hatred and frustrated ambition. 18 months of pretending to love you, pretending to care about your boring philanthropic projects, pretending to be satisfied with missionary position twice a week, when all I really wanted was access to your bank accounts. Her confessions poured out like poison from a broken bottle, each revelation more shocking than the last. She described forging documents, bribing household staff for information about Marcus's habits and preferences, even hiring private investigators to research his past relationships so she could craft the perfect persona to ensnare his heart. The depth of her deception was breathtaking in its calculated cruelty, a masterpiece of manipulation that had almost succeeded in its ultimate goal. Maya looked up at her father with eyes that held wisdom far beyond her 5 years, her small voice cutting through the chaos around them with crystal clarity. "Daddy," she said, tugging on his expensive tuxedo jacket, "this is why Mama was scared of your world. She knew bad people would try to hurt you for your money." The innocent observation hit Marcus like a revelation, helping him understand for the first time why Amara had disappeared all those years ago. She hadn't abandoned him out of lack of love. She had fled to protect their unborn children from exactly this kind of danger, the predators and parasites who circled wealth like vultures around a carcass. His brilliant, loving Amara had seen the threat that his desperate loneliness had blinded him to, and her sacrifice had ultimately saved not just their children's lives, but his own life as well. Marcus Jr. and Michael pressed closer to their father's sides, their young minds struggling to process the adult evil they were witnessing, but understanding instinctively that their family was finally safe together. "We came just in time, didn't we, Daddy?" Michael whispered, his gentle nature shining through even in the midst of chaos and danger. Marcus nodded, his throat too tight with emotion to speak, as he realized how close he had come to losing everything: his life, his fortune, and most importantly, the chance to know and love these 3 miraculous children who had saved him from his own blind trust. The triplets had given him the greatest gift possible, not just his life, but his future as their father. Victoria raised a vial above her head like a weapon, her final desperate gambit in a game she had already lost beyond any hope of recovery. "You think you can just humiliate me and walk away?" Victoria screamed, her voice echoing through the cathedral like a banshee's wail as federal agents closed in from all sides. Her designer wedding gown billowed around her like the wings of a fallen angel, white silk now stained with the darkness of her true nature revealed. The poison vial trembled in her raised hand, catching fragment of colored light from the stained glass windows and casting rainbow shadows across her twisted features. Security guards positioned themselves strategically throughout the sanctuary, their hands resting on concealed weapons, while they calculated the safest approach to disarm a woman who had nothing left to lose. The wedding guests cowered in their pews, some weeping openly as they witnessed the complete destruction of what they believed was a fairy tale romance. Victoria's mask had finally fallen away completely, revealing the cold-blooded killer who had been hiding behind beauty and charm for so many deadly years. Marcus wrapped his arms more tightly around his triplets, shielding their innocent eyes from the scene unfolding before them, while his own heart hammered against his ribs like a caged bird desperate for freedom. The children could feel their father's fear and responded with the instinctive courage that had brought them to this moment, their small hands patting his back in comfort even as they faced danger they couldn't fully comprehend. "It's okay, Daddy," Maya whispered against his shoulder, her yellow dress bright as sunshine in cathedral's dimming light. "We're not scared because we're together now, and families protect each other." Her words gave Marcus strength he didn't know he possessed, reminding him that these children had risked everything to save him, and now he would do anything to protect them from the monster he had almost married. The irony wasn't lost on him. His 5-year-old daughter showed more courage than he displayed in months of courtship with a woman planning his murder. "Drop the vial, Victoria," commanded Agent Sarah Mitchell, the FBI's lead investigator who had been monitoring potential threats against high-profile billionaires for the past decade. Her voice carried the authority of someone who had talked down armed suspects in hostage situations. But Victoria Ashford represented a different kind of dangerous criminal, one driven by greed and narcissism rather than desperation or mental illness. Agent Mitchell had seen Victoria's type before, the Black Widow killers who use beauty and sexuality as weapons more deadly than any gun or knife. These women were often the most dangerous because their victims came willingly, blinded by love and lust until it was too late to escape. The poison vial represented not just attempted murder, but the culmination of a predatory pattern that had likely claimed multiple victims across several states. Victoria's laugh bubbled up from somewhere deep and broken inside her chest, a sound that would haunt the nightmares of everyone present for years to come. "You want me to drop it?" she taunted, dancing backwards toward the altar with feline grace despite her towering heels and restrictive gown. Maybe I should just drink it myself and save everyone the trouble of a trial. Or better yet, her emerald eyes fixed on Marcus's children with predatory focus. Maybe I should throw at them and let them share my final gift of this happy family reunion. The threat sent ice through Marcus's veins as he realized Victoria's desperation had pushed her beyond reason or self-preservation. A cornered animal was always most dangerous, and Victoria Ashford had been cornered by 3 small children whose love had unraveled 18 months of careful planning in a matter of minutes. "Please," Marcus said, his voice breaking with emotion as he faced a woman who had deceived him so completely. "Whatever anger you have toward me, take it out on me. Leave my children alone. They're innocent in all of this. They're just babies who wanted to meet their father." His plea carried the weight of a parent's worst nightmare, the terror of watching his newly discovered family threatened by his own poor judgment in trusting a killer. The irony cut deep. He who could negotiate billion-dollar deals with ruthless competitors found himself helpless against a woman whose only weapons were beauty, lies, and a small vial of poison. Marcus had built an empire by reading people's motivations and anticipating their moves, but Victoria had exploited the one blind spot in his armor, his desperate hunger for the love and family that his wealth had never been able to purchase. Maya stepped slightly forward despite her father's protective embrace, her 5-year-old voice carrying a moral authority that silenced even Victoria's manic laughter. "You're a very sad lady," the little girl said with a devastating honesty that only children possess. "You could have had love if you wanted it, but you chose to be mean instead. That's why you're all alone, and we have each other." The simple observation hit Victoria like a physical blow, stripping away her last defenses against the truth of her own empty existence. Here was a child who had grown up poor, wearing second-hand clothes and living in a cramped apartment, but who radiated the kind of genuine happiness that all of Victoria's wealth and beauty had never brought her. Maya's innocent wisdom revealed the fundamental difference between them. One had been raised with love, and had love to give, while the other had spent her entire life taking from others without ever learning to give anything real in return. Marcus Jr. and Michael flanked their sister with the protective instinct of brothers who had learned to watch out for each other in a world that hadn't always been kind to poor children. "Our mama taught us that hurting people makes you hurt inside, too," Marcus Jr. added with a thoughtful intelligence he had inherited from his father. "Maybe if you stopped trying to hurt people, you wouldn't feel so angry all the time." Little Michael nodded his agreement, his gentle nature shining through even in the face of danger. "We could pray for you if you want," he offered with the pure compassion that only innocent hearts can extend to their enemies. The children's responses to Victoria's threats, not with fear or hatred, but with pity and offers of forgiveness, demonstrated the kind of character that no amount of money could buy and no amount of evil could destroy. Victoria stared at the triplets as if seeing them clearly for the first time, their goodness reflecting back the darkness of her own choices like a mirror she couldn't bear to look into. The poison vial wavered in her hand as something that might have been conscience struggled against a lifetime of selfish calculation and murderous ambition. For just a moment, the beautiful mask slipped not to reveal a monster, but a broken woman who had chosen power over love so many times that she had forgotten love was even possible. But the moment passed like a shadow, and Victoria's grip tightened on the vial as she made her final, desperate choice between redemption and destruction. The poison vial slipped from Victoria's trembling fingers as if her body had finally rebelled against the darkness consuming her soul, the glass container shattering against the marble floor with a sound like breaking promises and shattered dreams. The deadly liquid spread across the cathedral's ancient stones, hissing slightly as it met the holy water that had blessed countless weddings, baptisms, and funerals throughout the centuries. Federal agents rushed forward immediately, their tactical boots crunching over crystal fragments while they secured the crime scene that would become evidence in what prosecutors would later call the most brazen attempted murder plot in American legal history. Victoria collapsed to her knees among the wreckage of her designer gown, her emerald eyes now empty of the calculating intelligence that had made her so dangerous, replaced by the hollow stare of someone whose carefully constructed world had imploded beyond any hope of repair. Marcus felt his children's grip loosen around his arms as the immediate danger passed, but he held them even closer, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what these brave little souls had accomplished through pure love and determination. Maya looked up at him with eyes that sparkled with unshed tears of relief and joy, her yellow dress wrinkled from their desperate embrace, but her spirit unbroken by the evil they had confronted together. "We did it, Daddy," she whispered with 5-year-old pride. "We saved you, and now we can be a real family." Marcus Jr. and Michael nodded their agreement, their faces glowing with the satisfaction of a mission accomplished and a father finally found. The triplets had traveled hundreds of miles, crashed society's most watched wedding, and faced down a killer armed with nothing but truth and the unshakable belief that love would triumph over evil. Their courage had not only saved Marcus's life, but had given him the greatest gift any man could receive, the chance to be their father. The wedding guests slowly emerged from their shock-induced paralysis, many wiping away tears as they witnessed a reunion of a father and his children amid the ruins of what would have been a murderous marriage. Phones buzzed incessantly as the story spread across social media platforms faster than wildfire, transforming from a society wedding into a cautionary tale about the dangers of trusting beautiful predators who saw love as weakness to be exploited. Several prominent guests approached Marcus tentatively, offering congratulations on finding his children and expressing relief that he had escaped Victoria's deadly trap. The irony wasn't lost on anyone present. The wedding of the century had become the rescue of the century, orchestrated by 3 5-year-old heroes who had proven that blood was indeed thicker than champagne and love more powerful than poison. Father Mackenzie approached the reunited family with tears streaming down his weathered cheeks. His prayer book clutched to his chest as he struggled to find words adequate for the miracle he had witnessed. "Marcus," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "in all my years of performing wedding ceremonies, I have never seen love triumph so completely over evil. These children are not just your biological offspring. They are angels sent to save your life and restore your faith in what truly matters." The priest's blessing carried the weight of divine intervention, acknowledging that some rescues came not through human planning, but through the mysterious workings of providence and pure hearts willing to speak truth to power. The cathedral that had nearly witnessed a billionaire's last moments instead became the setting for his spiritual and emotional rebirth as a father. Victoria was led away in handcuffs that seemed almost anticlimactic after the drama of her confession and collapse, her designer wedding gown trailing behind her like a broken white flag of surrender. The woman who had entered St. Patrick's Cathedral as a bride-to-be would leave as a defendant facing charges of attempted murder, fraud, and conspiracy that would likely keep her behind bars for the rest of her natural life. As the federal agents escorted her toward the cathedral doors, she turned back once to look at Marcus and his children, her emerald eyes now reflecting something that might have been regret for the life she could have chosen if she had possessed a capacity for genuine love instead of parasitic greed. But the moment passed quickly, and Victoria Ashford disappeared into the custody of justice, leaving behind only the memory of beauty corrupted by evil and the shattered remnants of the most expensive poison in criminal history. Marcus knelt on the cathedral floor, gathering his triplets into his arms, while tears of gratitude and overwhelming joy streamed down his face unchecked. "I have so much to learn about being your father," he whispered against their soft hair, breathing in the scent of childhood innocence and unconditional love. "Will you teach me?" Maya giggled through her own tears, her small hands patting his cheeks with the tender care that only daughters can show their fathers. "We know lots of things," she assured him. "We can teach you how to make pancakes shaped like Mickey Mouse and how to tell bedtime stories that aren't scary." Marcus Jr. added his own expertise. "I can show you my drawings of houses that look just like the ones in your magazines." Michael, ever the peacemaker, simply snuggled closer to his father's chest and declared, "We just want to love you and have you love us back." The simple request broke and mended Marcus's heart simultaneously, reminding him that the most valuable things in life couldn't be bought, only earned through presence, patience, and genuine care. As camera flashes illuminated the cathedral, and news reporters began crafting the story that would dominate headlines for months to come, Marcus made a silent promise to the 3 small miracles in his arms. He would use his billions not to build bigger empires or acquire more companies, but to create a world worthy of their innocence. funding schools in poor neighborhoods, establishing healthcare clinics in underserved communities, and fighting the very injustices that had shaped their mother's decision to raise them in hiding. Maya, Marcus Jr., and Michael had not only saved his life, they had given him a purpose beyond profit, a legacy beyond wealth, and a love beyond anything his money could ever purchase. The children who had crashed his wedding had also crashed through the walls around his heart, transforming a lonely billionaire into the father he was always meant to be. The fairy tale that had begun as a nightmare ended with the most beautiful truth of all, that real families are built not on convenience or calculation, but on courage, sacrifice, and the unshakable belief that love will always find a way home. If this story moved your heart, make sure to subscribe because there are more incredible tales of triumph waiting to be told. 6 months later, the renovated community center in Cleveland buzzed with the laughter of children playing on brand new playground equipment, while their parents attended free job training classes funded by the Wellington Foundation for Social Justice. Marcus stood in the doorway watching his triplets help other kids learn to read, their patient kindness a testament to the values Amara had instilled during those years of raising them alone. Maya had convinced her father to hire 3 full-time teachers for the after-school program, while Marcus Jr. had designed a layout for a computer lab that would give poor children access to technology they could never afford. Little Michael had insisted on a quiet corner with soft cushions where shy kids could retreat when feeling overwhelmed, his gentle wisdom guiding the space's creation. The center represented everything Marcus had learned about using wealth as a tool for healing rather than accumulation, transforming his children's neighborhood into a beacon of hope and opportunity. Amara emerged from the kitchen where she had been preparing snacks for the evening's parent meeting, her architect's eye surveying the renovated space with satisfaction and pride. The community center project had been her first official commission from the Wellington Foundation, and she had poured her heart into creating a space that honored the dignity of struggling families while providing resources they desperately needed. Working alongside Marcus again had been initially awkward, their conversations carefully focused on blueprints and budgets while they navigated the complex emotions of their reunion. But watching him interact with their children, helping Maya with homework, building block towers with the boys, reading bedtime stories with voices for every character, had gradually healed the wounds that 7 years of separation had carved into both their hearts. The triplets had adapted to their new life with the resilience that children possess, splitting time between their father's Manhattan penthouse and their mother's Cleveland apartment, while their parents slowly rebuilt the trust that fear had fractured. Maya delighted in showing her father how to braid hair and paint fingernails, while Marcus Jr. spent hours at his father's home office learning about architecture and urban planning. Michael had claimed the role of family peacemaker, gently encouraging his parents to talk about their feelings, and reminding everyone that they were all still learning how to be a family together. The children's wisdom and patience had created space for healing that neither Marcus nor Amara could have managed on their own, proving once again that love could overcome even the deepest hurts when nurtured with genuine commitment to forgiveness and growth. Marcus had quietly used his resources to ensure Victoria Ashford received the psychological evaluation and treatment she needed while serving her life sentence for attempted murder and multiple counts of fraud. The investigation into her past had revealed a trail of suspicious deaths and financial manipulation spanning over a decade, bringing closure to other families who had lost loved ones to her predatory schemes. Rather than seeking revenge against a woman who had nearly destroyed his life, Marcus chose to fund programs for rehabilitating white-collar criminals and supporting victims of financial abuse. His children had taught him that justice served with compassion was more powerful than justice served with vengeance, and that healing society's wounds required addressing root causes rather than simply punishing symptoms. The Wellington Foundation had become a model for how billionaire philanthropy could create lasting change rather than temporary charity, funding everything from affordable housing projects designed by Amara to scholarship programs for children from poor families. Marcus had learned to see his wealth not as a burden to be protected or a weapon to be wielded, but as a responsibility to be shared with communities that needed resources and opportunities. The Foundation's board included voices from the neighborhoods they served, ensuring that solutions came from the people who understood problems firsthand rather than wealthy donors imposing their assumptions from ivory towers. Every initiative was measured not just by dollars spent, but by lives improved, families strengthened, and communities empowered to solve their own challenges. As evening approached and families began arriving for the parent meeting, Marcus felt a small hand slip into his and looked down to see Maya gazing up at him with the same intelligent eyes that had first captured his attention in that cathedral 6 months ago. "Daddy," she said with the serious tone she used when sharing important observations, "remember when you used to be sad all the time because you thought nobody loved you?" Marcus nodded, still amazed by his daughter's ability to cut through complex emotions with simple clarity. "Well, now you know that lots of people love you. Not because you have money, but because you have a good heart. And we love you most of all because you're our daddy and you love us back." Her words encapsulated everything Marcus had learned about the difference between being valued for what he owned versus being cherished for who he was beneath the wealth and power. Marcus Jr. and Michael joined their father and sister, the four of them forming a small circle of connection in the bustling community center, while Amara called the meeting to order. "I want to tell you both something important," Marcus said, kneeling to bring himself to his son's eye level. "You saved my life that day in the cathedral, but more than that, you taught me how to live. Every day with you three is better than all the money I made in all the years before I knew you existed." The boys beamed with pride and happiness, their father's words affirming what they had always believed but hadn't been sure he understood. That being rich meant having people who loved you unconditionally, not just having money in bank accounts. As the community meeting began, and Marcus listened to parents sharing their dreams for their children's futures, he realized that the story, which had started with a crash wedding, had evolved into something far more beautiful than any fairy tale romance. He had gained not just 3 children and the woman he had never stopped loving, but an entire community of families who had welcomed him not as a billionaire savior, but as a neighbor committed to their shared success. Maya, Marcus Jr., and Michael had taught him that true wealth was measured in relationships rather than dollars, and that the most valuable inheritance he could leave them wasn't money, but the knowledge that love, courage, and justice would always triumph over greed, fear, and deception. The little voices that had once cried, "Don't marry her," in a cathedral had become the foundation of a family built on truth, a business empire redirected toward healing, and a community transformed by the simple belief that every person deserved dignity, opportunity, and hope. Sometimes the most powerful stories aren't about what money can buy, but about what love sees.